Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Phil Escott has been writing for as long as he can remember. Unlike drumming, which is his other passion, writing was always effortless for him. Phil has written many printed and online publications on such diverse subjects as travel, carnivore and low carbohydrate diets, health, weight training, mountain biking, motorcycling, carp fishing, and spirituality and non-duality. And he has used his pedantic tendencies to proofread a national magazine every month and many books for other authors. He's also written a book on how he reversed crippling arthritis and how he used the experience to find himself and much more, called Arthritis, the best thing that ever happened to me, healing the pain of psoriatic and rheumatoid arthritis, and how autoimmunity can help heal your soul and body. He's also the author of Pure Activity, Minimize the Impact of Cardio Workouts, Build Muscle and Lose Fat, with inspiration from paleo, Ayurveda, HIIT, and yoga. His latest book is called The Red Pill Food Evolution, which encourages readers to discover the hidden history of how food has been used over the centuries to make humanity weak, sick, and dependent, and how to fix it. Excuse me. Phil Escott, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you, Casey. That was a great introduction. Yeah, I love to you put that together. That was
It was less than great. I goofed up the title of one of your books. I had the body and soul kind of backwards. So I wouldn't say great, but it was a collection of lots of different things that I've taken from you.
Oh, no. It's anyone I spotted. It's the Red Pill Food Revolution, not evolution. But I love the pedantic nature thing about, yeah, I love being a grammar Nazi. I can't help it.
I love that. I love that. Just go with it, man. Oh, man. So you were in the northern part of England at the time of recording. It's the end of November, and you said it's pretty dark and cold where you are. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's pretty dark and cold. There's no summer left for us now up here. That's for sure. And there's not much in the summer, in England. But there we go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a beautiful day here in Salt Lake City, but I'm feeling a little dark and cold because as of the time of recording, Formula One has just ended its 2023 season. I've really gotten into Formula One recently, and I'm really bummed that the season's over. Is that something you ever get into as well?
No, I mean, I have watched it now and again. I prefer the bikes. There's more room for overtaking. But I have noticed that, what's his name? Well, Lewis Hamilton. And he seems, I just noticed the other day that all his vegan businesses are collapsing or whatever. And that's the nearest I've got to Formula One in the recent past anyway.
There you go. Oh, that's crazy. Well, we have a track here in our area, and it's not used for any major motorsport, but it was for a few years used for MotoGP, which is the highest level of motorcycle racing. And it was the only stop that they were making here in North America. So these are the guys that can't walk through the airport in Germany without getting, mauled by all the people. And here they're nobody. There was hardly anybody showing up. So they ended up canceling the race around my parts. But I remember going 2 or 3 years in a row, and it is incredible what those guys can do on a bike, leaning completely over. It's insanity.
I know. It's not only knees on the ground now, it's elbows on the ground, isn't it? I mean, it's barking mad. Yeah.
Crazy. 200 miles down the stretch on 2 wheels is absolutely insane. So I can't fault you for enjoying the motorcycles more than the cars. That's totally fine. Well, you have written quite a bit, and we're going to be talking primarily about your latest book today, which is wonderfully put together. You were talking offline, and you said how proud you were of how everything came together, and you really should be. I think you used the right word by saying it was a really like a masterpiece and a collection of all kinds of different stories on, like we mentioned in the introduction, how food has been used to kind of enslave us as a people. And I think you tell that story really, really well. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about your other book, which talks about arthritis. And to be able to talk about that, we need to talk about your personal story. And it seems like you've taken the approach in your life of being the ultimate guinea pig and trying to get sick as many ways as you possibly can to then try to fix it and then tell everybody how you did it. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, that hasn't been my intention, but that's how it's worked out. Yeah. I often say that, I'm so good in consultations or whatever with people with autoimmunity because I've made every mistake in the book myself. And it's, apart from staying in the pharma route, which basically keeps you sick forever. But I managed to get out of that in about a month or so. I did try their poisons, but it obviously wasn't working. So, yeah, I have. Yeah, I have made a hell of a lot of mistakes. And so it's very easy to spot those mistakes in other people and what they do and try and save them from the suffering I put myself through, But Yeah, it's been a huge learning curve, certainly. Yeah, yeah.
And this all started with you by getting interested in health and fitness, correct? This has been something that's been on your mind for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm 61 now, and I've been looking into this since about 1980. I've always been fascinated with it, but I got caught up a lot in the the sort of 30 years after 1980. I was pretty much caught up in the whole Eastern spirituality thing, which sort of drags you into vegetarianism, really. And I was convinced that that was the most healthy and the most sort of spiritual way to eat. So many of us have been caught up in that. And so I was eating, rice and dal all day long, and all the sort of Indian vegetarian stuff, and it didn't. All it ended up doing. I mean, I should have listened to the whispers over those years from 1980, because things started to set in after a couple of years, really, when I started eating like that. But I didn't really recognize it. I thought, oh, maybe it's because I moved up north, around mid-80s. I thought maybe it's just the cold weather, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Of course, it wasn't. I was just eating rubbish and believing that that was the way to go, because every guru ate like that. And although I think there's some beautiful things in that kind of spirituality, like in everything else, there's a core of truths and a whole load of bullshit around it. And by 2010, it had made me tremendously ill. I mean, by the early 2000s, it had made me pretty fat after being in pretty good shape as far as I could be on that kind of a diet from running a gym and whatever, and in the late 90s. But then by the early 2000s, I wasn't training anymore. I was eating more rubbish, and I started to get pretty fat. And by 2010, I was, the whole psoriatic arthritis thing kicked off. Although there was whispers for years, I should have listened. I'd have known now. If somebody comes to me with a consult saying, I'm a bit overweight, I've got this sort of inflammation, my sacroiliac joints are kicking off a bit, and I'd immediately spot it now. Obviously a lot of inflammatory arthritic conditions start in the sacroiliac joints. And, I was getting a lot of that back pain, iritis, where your eye starts to glue up. It's a horrific condition. Anyway, so 2010, then, one ankle blew up, then the other one, then one knee. And then I thought, what the hell's going on? And I freaked out and went to the doctors, to the rheumatologists, who were obviously useful and useless rather, and put me on some horrible, they put me on the steroids and some sulfasalazine stuff that just turned my fingers yellow and gave me some sort of a psychotic episode. So I thought, this isn't the way to go. And so I thought, well, I'd better go even more veggie, so I went vegan, and then raw vegan, then fruitarian with all the juicing and everything. And all that gave me was kidney stones and muscle wastage. And so that didn't fix anything. And then, discovered Natasha Campbell McBride, who is just wonderful, who did all the GAPS diet stuff, who I just had on my Red Pill Buddhas podcast as well. She's lovely. She's one of the only people in this space who I haven't met and got to know. And so it was wonderful to chat to her. And her stuff really saved my life, I think, along with Jack Cruz, who's become a friend as well, who did the foreword to my arthritis book. But he's a total genius, he's got a brain the size of a planet, and all his stuff on light, water, and magnetism. And what a character he is. I love him. And his website and Natasha's books and whatever, they really got me back onto eating a bunch of meat, which I sort of combined with a few veg up till 2015 and pretty much fixed myself. But then I just thought that I feel a lot better on the days where I don't bother to cook the veg, or they've rotted down in the compost drawer in the fridge and they're not available.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so there's so much wastage in any sort of plant diet. And so I just ate meat from 2015, and that's what I've done. And it seems to work. It seems to work time and time again. And so now I've been doing consultations since then for people with autoimmunity, and these lovely healing stories that we see. It's such a rewarding thing to do, to pass that on, even if it's not very financially rewarding, while the rheumatologists are driving around in their big cars and having their big houses, for poisoning people. And I just think it's time the medical system came down. They're wonderful, aren't they, for broken bones and whatever, but not this kind of thing. Nothing chronic. It doesn't work, and
Yeah.
people are striking out now, and it's lovely as well, isn't it, to see all the docs coming over to it, like Anthony and Sean and Ken, and all these guys coming over to it. It's beautiful, and they're really doing a hell of a lot of good and getting a lot of notice. If you look at
Yeah.
my friend Ben, who is the main wordsmith, for the Red Pill Food Revolution book, it just beautifully he put it together. He looks at all these sort of Google trends. He's showing it the other day where veganism's gone right down and carnivore's coming right up in the Google searches. Right. That'll be great. Just get it out there. Not that everybody needs to go there, and we're not dogmatic, but if you're as broken as I was, it's a very good way to go.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's just going against the message that we're hearing. I mean, we've gone totally on the offensive on a documentary that was published on Netflix called Live to 100. And it promotes these areas of the world called blue zones where people live a really long time. And along with that, as our recent guest, Dr. Bill Schindler, said, it's kind of a bait and switch. They make you think that people in these areas are eating plant-based diets predominantly. And that's not what's happening. When people go there and actually observe these people, they don't eat anything like a plant-based diet. So it's about getting that narrative out and telling people that no, red meat is not going to kill you. Fat is not bad for you. You need cholesterol. You need saturated fat. It's just going counter to those messages that are just so ingrained in us at this point.
Totally. And yeah, I listened to Bill Schindler on Anthony's podcast recently, and just absolutely illustrates it, doesn't it? And these blue zone things, that's one of the biggest cons ever. The Okinawa thing, I mean, it's ridiculous. They all these people who lived to 100 grew up eating a ton of pork, and then in the war, they came in and killed all the pigs, nicked them. A lot of the young men got killed in the war. It bumped up the age, and it's not a blue zone anymore. Now they are on a more plant-based diet. They had to be for a while because they took all the pigs away. And the con of it, the depth of the con of it. I mean, you look at these blue zones, and these people have a completely different lifestyle. They have a good social network. The elders are respected in the community. They often have a low deuterium water source. Some good glacial water or whatever. Quite a lot of these people who live a long time, but there's nothing. There was some study recently, wasn't there, that the only food that actually increased telomere length was red meat. Nothing else did. So, everything points to just how much nonsense people like T. Colin Campbell and Dan Buettner have put out in their books, China Study and the Blue Zones, and absolute utter nonsense.
Yep, totally. A mutual friend of ours and somebody that we both follow, Mary Reddick, just got back from Okinawa. She travels the world and investigates these people. And she said, absolutely not. They're not eating tons and tons of sweet potatoes. And in the documentary, they admit that they took their data, nutritional data from 1950, so 5 years post-war. And the woman who's talking about these purple sweet potatoes is calling in the documentary, calling them survival foods. These are foods that helped us survive. Well, yeah, they can help you survive if you don't have anything else. You explained the pork thing perfectly. But people are going to watch that documentary, beautifully done, and walk away thinking like a plant-based diet is what I need to do.
I know, it's bizarre. Mary's wonderful, isn't she? I had her on my podcast too. She's so cool, and just the experiences she has. And I'm always linking that episode to people when they say, "Oh no, these people eat plant-based diets." I say, well, where have you got that from? You've got it from some funny little study that somebody's done and taken it off and written an article about it. But actually listen to somebody who's lived with all these tribes, and they do not eat like that. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Such good point. So I want to go back on your personal story, and you mentioned it twice that you were eating rubbish. Now, when you say rubbish, what do you mean by that? Were you eating like as well as you could for plant-based? Like, are you eating salads and vegetables and what we would consider like quote unquote healthy foods? Or did it turn out like most people when they eat a plant-based diet and they start eating tons of processed garbage? Like when you say rubbish, what do you mean?
Well, I'd class it all as rubbish, to be honest, but there were many years when I made the effort, and I would spend hours a day cooking all these really elaborate Indian vegetarian curries and whatever. And I'd do that. But then I'd have periods of time where, my breakfast would be 4 bowls of crunchy nut cornflakes and then some pita bread with melted cheese on it. and you know, that kind of thing, where it's sort of heavy on the grains and the dairy. And I think a lot of people, when they're vegetarian, do go for that, because there's something very addictive about that combination of carbs and fats. It's hyper palatable, but it's still vegetarian, you know, so people think it's healthy. Just as long as it's not red meat, you'll be fine. You know, the crunchy nut cornflakes, well, they're vegan, aren't they? You know, it's ridiculous. So yeah, I've been sucked into both sides of it from time to time. And then when I did get sick, I did go down the, you know, the raw juicing and all of that kind of thing, because I thought, well, this is the purest thing. This is alkalizing the body. You know, all that nonsense that people believe in. And I think that a lot of people do get caught up in that, and it's just as bad often. I mean, some of those diets are way higher in oxalates than even the crap diets. So, you know, it depends what your body is particularly susceptible to. I think some people clear certain plant toxins better than others, you know, better than other people, and also some plant toxins better than other plant toxins. Like a load of people might dump oxalates without any particular issue and not get big kidney stones like I did. So, you know, I think it completely depends on your sort of redox potential and whatever. I'm sorry, there's a bit of noise here because the kids are coming home from school, so they're piling in the front door. So
no worries. Hello, kids.
Yeah, but yeah, the healthy thing, it's funny, isn't it? Because as soon as we start to think healthy and we start to say, okay, well, you know, I'm going to eat a healthy vegetarian or vegan diet, we start to eat all the things that no hunter-gatherer tribe would ever eat, all the stalks and leaves of the plants. I mean, as you were saying, you know, something like the tubers are survival food, but stalks and leaves aren't. They don't eat that stuff. They might use it as herbal medicine sometimes, and actually, more often than not, it's sort of applied topically, isn't it, rather than ingested. But then if they do ingest it, they know it's toxic and it has a short-term effect, and it's something they'll use as a short-term medication. It's not something that they'll use as you know, they don't have a salad. They don't, when they go out and they kill something and they bring it back and everybody rejoices, there's nobody fixing the salad in the background. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to get back to that historical content because I love the way you guys structured your book and kind of talk about it almost in a historical sense. I really love that. Before we do, I don't think we've really covered this at any great length on our podcast. Arthritis in particular. Oftentimes, the hardest things we ever go through in life become the most rewarding. And that's the title of your book. This is something that I went through, and it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. So what did you learn through going through arthritis that made you want to put that into words and write that book?
Well, you know, it was an agonizing time, but those times kind of wake you up, don't they? You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And you have to throw out the stuff that isn't working. I thought I was a great expert. You know, I'd written a book. I mean, one of the books that you mentioned is an old one, and I had to completely rewrite the diet chapter in that because I looked at it and my toes curled with embarrassment. You know, I had to do a bit of a Tim Noakes on that one and say, look, I was talking rubbish. But what I learned was, you know, all this wonderful stuff that frees you from not only doctors, but I went through years of being a terrible hypochondriac. You know, as soon as you get a little lump somewhere, it's like, oh my God, what's that? You know, it's a tumor. Am I dying? Am I, you know, now if I get a symptom, it's like, that's interesting. How can we follow that through? What am I doing wrong? Not run to the doctor and ask what it is. You know, something's obviously gone wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, there's only one thing that goes wrong with the human body, and that's mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, that can be caused by many things, usually falling under the umbrella of our ancestral disconnects. But if the mitochondria go wrong, other stuff goes wrong. If you just take away all the things that are messing up the mitochondria, you know, on a diet level, emotional level, EMFs, artificial light, all that kind of thing. So that's why I apologize for the lighting here. I've got it as bright as I can stand it at the moment. But, you know, if you take away those things, the body tends to fix itself. And it was a beautiful introduction to not being frightened of my own body anymore and trusting it, you know, instead of going, oh, it's working against me, you know, and the docs say, Well, your body is attacking itself. I love this. Yeah, it's just unlucky. It's genetic. Your body's attacking itself. There's nothing you can do about it. Nothing works. Take these pills to shut down your immune system because it's misbehaving. I mean, what a medical model. Just astonishing. The body doesn't work against us. If there's inflammation in there, it's good every time. It's doing something. It doesn't mean to say the cause of it is good, but inflammation is always trying to clear something out. The body's not working against you. So it's the old sort of analogy of taking your car in with the oil warning light on, and the mechanic smashes it and then charges you some money. And this is what the doctors are doing, right? You've got to get to the root cause of it, and then you can find out where the inflammation's coming from. It is agonizing. I find it among clients, the people who have arthritis are the ones who heal the quickest, because it's so damn painful that they get a lot of motivation, and a lot of other conditions, you're just a bit insulin resistant, you're, putting on a bit of weight, whatever. It's not that uncomfortable. You've still got the couch, you got Netflix, your corn puffs and your diet soda and all of that sort of thing. And it's all quite comfortable, but when you've actually got screaming arthritis, you do anything to get rid of it. I mean, that pain is suicidal level sometimes. It's horrific. But it forces you to relearn. And I'm a lazy sod. I don't do much work really unless I have to. And that makes me have to do stuff. So I ran into trouble again. I went on Anthony Chaffee's podcast to talk about this, actually, about what happened last year, because I got myself in a real mess again. In fact, it was worse pain and more inflammation even than 2010. But it took me about 3 months to get out of it, as opposed to 3 years before. And that was just from, a lot of stresses in the year, other stuff. But on a diet level, touring with a band that I was playing a lot of gigs, a lot of artificial light, eating too much pork, dairy, chicken, and eggs. Because really, if you're autoimmune, the safest thing to do is eat beef and lamb, fatty beef and lamb. That's it, full stop. And that's basically what I eat. But I was straying away from it too much, because it's difficult to get that on the road. It's very difficult. It's much easier to get eggs and bacon and some cheese and a bunch of chicken or something like that, But I was fine on it for a while, but then it backed up, and then my body says, no, enough. You've misbehaved in the past. You can't even do that anymore. You've lost the privileges. So yeah, I got in proper trouble and was stranded this time last year on the sofa again. Lost 45 pounds through the inflammation that I didn't need to lose. And it's taken a while to build that back up again. But yeah, my message is to autoimmune people, just stop messing about. You really need to do the sort of paleo medicina sort of ratios of 1/3 fat, 2/3 lean meat on the plate. Keep going until it's fixed. And then you might be able to be a little more lenient now and again. But the body kind of never forgets the panic it went through if it's been through it once. And so, you can land yourself back in trouble again. It doesn't take so much. Oh, but I ate, bread for 30 years and I was fine. Yeah, but eventually the body just goes, no, we've had enough of that stuff. And then you've got to be much more strict. So that it was a big lesson to me last year as well, because you do see some people healing on, if somebody comes along to you with diabetes or whatever, by all means, eat butter and cheese and eggs and all day. You'll be fine. You'll reverse the diabetes. It's not ideal food, even on a carnivore diet. But, you have to be a bit more strict with autoimmunity and cancer and stuff like that. And so it's fascinating to see, again, going back to how quickly we can clear toxins. With those foods, you're taking in certain problems with the dairy. You're taking in high linoleic acid with the chicken and the pork, where the animals have been fed crap. You're getting all that kind of thing going in. And that might be okay for some people who can really clear those toxins quickly. But once you become autoimmune, I'm not sure you can. You probably got that way because you don't clear things so well as other people. It's not genetics. It's something different. And so, going back to that fatty beef and lamb, it's amazing how it resolves. But it's giving people the confidence in that, because it doesn't fix it in a week. Nothing does. It takes us a long time to get into these messes. So, if you can get somebody really strict for like 90 days or something, you see wonderful healing. But it's confidence, isn't it? Because we've been fed so much bullshit. How can it possibly be healthy to eat the one thing that the elites are trying to destroy and tell us is the most unhealthy thing ever? And that's fatty red meat. And that's where the magic lies.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's very interesting to me. I'm sure you've gotten this reaction as well. Like people doing a carnivore diet are already restricting their foods to some extent. They're not eating plants, they're not eating carbohydrates. And so they already feel restricted. I remember last year I had one client in particular who had really good results with low carbohydrate, was still including dairy in her coffee. And she was in a weight loss stall. And we were talking about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm a little suspect of the dairy. Maybe we should get this out. And she was like, well, I'm already very, very strict. Why do I have to worry about this? I have lost all this weight to this point and included the dairy. Why do I have to eliminate it now? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just something you can try. And I remember her reaction. She said, it's not fucking fair. It's not fucking fair. And I sat there and I'm like, I know, like, you're right. It's not fair. It sucks. Like, you're eating a very good carnivore diet that included the chicken, the pork, the eggs, all that stuff, the dairy especially. Like, was it frustrating for you also to realize, like, even on this very restrictive diet, there's still components of it that can be inflammatory that you have to remove? Was that frustrating?
Well, not really, because I always have this thing that nothing tastes as good as remission feels when you've been in that much pain. But to me, I don't feel that it's restrictive. I feel I am absolutely totally convinced now that is the least reactive food that we can eat. It's our ancestral diet. The trouble is our upbringing and our addictions that we've got along the way. Because, some dude sitting in his cave and whatever, he's not thinking, I wish they'd hurry up and invent Cocoa Pops. Because they didn't exist back then, so they didn't have the craving for it. And no, hunter-gatherer tribes, they don't, there's well, the Maasai, they're sort of herders as well, so they have some dairy. And it's funny, actually, if we look at them, they do have certain issues that tribes that just eat meat, like up in the north, don't have, although they are very healthy. But the only thing I could put it down to would be the dairy. But, that stuff as well. Okay, everybody gets focused on carbohydrates. This is really bad. Well, it's not really. I mean, nature gives it to us certain times. It'll give us the tubers. It'll give us the berries. It'll give us the nuts in the autumn and whatever, seasonally. So that's obviously not particularly nasty in small doses seasonally. But it is it doesn't occur in nature where there's a mix of fats and carbohydrates. So that becomes hyper palatable, and those are the things that we remember as comfort foods. And dairy has that as well, and no animal really has dairy past when it's young. So that's an area I agree with the vegans, that we're not supposed to eat dairy. But Zofia made a very interesting point, that she says raw dairy is more harmful than pasteurized dairy. Now, this really upsets people. It was funny. She was at a conference here, and Ben and I were showing her some of the Peak District up here. We went on this walk, and I made this short video while we were there because she said that. And I said, let's make a little video about it. I was just mucking about. It's on my YouTube channel, and I was taking a mickey and stuff. We were having a laugh about this, but then I did a podcast episode with her as well to go deeper into it. But, it is plausible that people who have dairy and they have trouble with it. So when it's pasteurized, that destroys the lactase and people can't digest the lactose. So they get an initial reaction and it's not good. And they go to raw dairy, they don't have that reaction because the lactase is intact. And so then they think, oh, this is fine. But as Zofia pointed out, the pasteurization also destroys some of the growth factors. And the growth factors in time can create unusual cell replication in an adult because they're not supposed to be drinking the milk and eating the dairy. So the raw stuff can have more problems down the line. Now, is this true? Some people have really healed up on raw dairy, but then again, that's in comparison to what? What were they eating before? Pizza and donuts and stuff like that. And then they go to raw dairy. It's going to be an improvement, particularly short term. So as far as I can see, there is only one food that humans can have that has no consequences to it, and that's fatty ruminant animal meat from animals that have eaten what they're supposed to eat. And so, you know, that seems to be the sweet spot for that. And so I've been doing it so long now, since 2015. I don't find it's restrictive. I also like, you know, I've always been a bit of a naughty boy, and I always like the rebellious nature of it. I like the fact that I just eat beef and lamb and it upsets people. I enjoy that. You know, I enjoy that conversation because I don't enter into arguments, just have a bit of a laugh about it. And I love it. You know, that time when you're sitting in a restaurant with other people and they've all got their pizzas and their ice creams and whatever they've got, and you've got a steak on the plate and they're worried about you. They go, you're going to die of heart disease and whatever. And you're looking at what they're eating. And I'm the only one who can fit my arse on a chair. You know, they're all spilling out over the side and they're worried about me. And it's hilarious. So the problem is not really that it's restrictive, I don't think. It's just basic. It's not restrictive. It's not extreme. It's just basic, because we've got all these other foods that are all hyperpalatable. And then not only are the, you know, even the natural foods, like, say, you know, if I could eat cream mixed with honey all day, I would. I mean, it's so delicious, right? It's so addictive. I could just drink it. But then that's even natural ingredients. But then you get to the other end of it where, you know, these food companies and the whistleblowers have said they sit down and they try and make it as addictive as possible. And that's what they do. And then they've got a combination of the grains and the seed oils to make that combination of fats and carbs. And then it's addictive and it's so destroying. But that's what we're addicted to. And that's what we feel that we've been restricted from having. It's like somebody, you know, smashing their foot with a hammer, and then somebody takes a hammer away and go, well, you've restricted me, you know? Well, just stop smashing your foot with a hammer. It's nuts, isn't it? And that's what the problem is for people. And that's why, you know, Ben and I run the Big Fat Challenge, where we have people come in and, you know, we've got these daily calls, 90 days from last January to March, and all the challenges that we do, loads of different stuff in there. But the books, everything's in there. The audio books, courses that I've done, it's all there, you know. But we also got a section on tapping from this wonderful lady, Senior Field, who was part of the challenge, and it turned out she was you know, trained in emotional freedom technique. And there's plenty of techniques like that, but they are really useful for breaking addictions. Once you get free of that, you can actually identify what's food and what is a recreational drug, as Ben calls it, because the rest of it is. You know, a donut, it's a recreational drug. It's not food. You know, there's that wonderful saying, isn't there, that humans are the only species intelligent enough to make their own food and stupid enough to eat it.
I love it.
And that's what we do. So, you know, the stuff that we make is the addictive stuff that people get emotionally attached to. It doesn't take really that long for the sugar addiction as such to die down and to become fat adapted. But much more difficult than that is to get rid of the emotional stuff, you know, because we all consider it comfort food, you know, and our parents gave us, oh, here, have some sweets, have this, have that, you know, all this nonsense. And so it's really ingrained in us, and it is difficult to let things go, but it's not restrictive. It's just getting rid of all the stuff that isn't actually food. And we have to change our way of thinking. And that can be difficult for some people, but, you know, you can help people with that. And that's what we do in the challenge as well. And also the tribe, where it's lovely to have that support as you're going through something like that. And it's all very well for me to say it, you know, because I've been carnivore for like 8 years or whatever. But for people who are like 1 month down the line from them, who are saying, well, it's actually easing up now, it's actually, you know, and to have that kind of support and see that and what they did to get through it is very important to get through that, because we are all addicted. It's the most addictive substance on the planet, isn't it? And, you know, sugar, and you mix it with fat, then you're stuffed, you know.
Yeah. Very well explained. I love all of that. We just did an episode where we featured Olivia Quadja, who runs Anthony Chaffee's book club. And as part of that episode, we brought different members of the book club into the show to be able to explain their stories. And every one of them mentioned that, like, yeah, it's cool to read these books and get this content. And Olivia's really smart and she's teaching us stuff. But it's also like we're all talking amongst ourselves and getting that support, especially with people all over the world in different cultures and different areas where food can be completely different. And so everybody who's in that type of group mentions that same thing. So I think it's really cool what you offer with your challenges, and that community, I think, is totally part of it. And yeah, when I think restriction, I'm thinking of your arthritis. That sounds very restrictive. To eat a steak and butter and keep it to mostly that doesn't sound very restrictive to me. And it can be frustrating for people, but I love the way you explain that it's actually really not restrictive especially if you're dealing with something really challenging. Which kind of brings us to your latest book, which just came out, The Red Pill Food Revolution. I know you've been writing books about the Red Pill Revolution, and it's kind of like a series almost. Can you tell us why you landed on that as the title?
Well, I mean, I think it's a bit overused, but the red pill thing, is from the Matrix, really. Just the fact that a lot of people, when they wake up to one thing, one aspect of what's been done to us over the centuries, it's much easier to wake up to other aspects of it. If we've been lied to about every single thing about food, what else is it that we've been lied to about? And that was the subject of the first book, The Red Pill Revolution, which was more general. But this one, we decided we'd go far more into the food side of it and just show exactly how this has been going on forever. How there's been sort of slave food, the gladiators and whatever. It's funny, wasn't it, in the Game Changers, where they go, oh, well, oats and stuff are so healthy because the gladiators ate them. And you think that they're probably like these dudes that play gladiators on the TV these days. And they weren't. They were just fat guys who could take a lot of sword blows, and they were just slaves and they were expendable. So they fed them the crap. And, it's been going on forever. And now it's so evil, I'll say, what they're actually doing and the things that they're promoting as healthy to eat. And so it's really just taking the listener through all of that, the reader through all of that. Or the listener, because it's out on audiobook as well. But really, I think it's just Ben has put together in that. We just did it via Zoom calls. There was me and there was Ben and there was Jeremy Ayres and Graham Norbury, great minds, and would collaborate on various chapters, and then Ben would take all the ideas, put them into words from what we'd said. So I can't say I wrote it. I was there with Ben and sort of collaborated on both the books. Excuse me, but it was such a great learning experience. It taught us so much with all the rabbit holes that we went into that we hadn't been into before. I mean, I think one of the wonderful concepts of it is the whole business of the rise of the psychopath. Where you've got a hunter-gatherer tribe. There's not really that much room for a psychopath in there. You might have one, and he might, turn out to be a decent warrior, or maybe even a good hunter. I don't know. Although I don't think hunting is psychopathic. I think it's very, very connected with nature. But once you decide that you're going to pretend to own a piece of land and you're going to grow crops on it. And then, of course, you have to protect those crops from other people coming in and stealing them. So then you have to sort of employ people and feed them. And then, that enables the rise of the psychopath, really. And we've got a load of them now. There's books, aren't there, which has sort of illustrated how few psychopaths there are actually in society, but how many of them are in quite high up places. And I think this is definitely going on now. The food companies, they know what they're doing. They know that they're killing people. The pharma companies know that they're killing people. And the people up the top are probably quite a high percentage of them are psychopathic or sociopathic. And this was, one of the lovely points about the book. I just say, go and have a look at the landing page of it, because it's a Red Pill no, it's not. It's the bigfatchallenge.com/book. And if you go down and there'll be a chapter rundown of it with all the different ideas, of everything that we've gone into with it, because It's wonderfully put together by Ben with all sorts of beautiful quotes all the way through as well. You see, amazing at choosing quotes as well, just lovely George Carlin stuff and things, because I mean that dude saw through this stuff a long time ago. But yeah, just I would say that for the history of diet in that sort of light of how it's been used as a weapon really over the centuries, particularly now. And I don't think there's been a book written that's that good on this whole subject. And I can say that because I didn't write it, right? I was a collaborator on it, and the way Ben's put it together, it was like, whoa, well done. It's distilled all of our ideas about it. But there's so many levels of it in there that it's difficult to go into. Go check it out. I think nobody will be disappointed with that one. It's funny, we had a comment the other day going, "This is the most important book ever written." And it was saying, "You two are like Morpheus and Neo, and the other two guys who are in there." I thought, isn't that fantastic? Like the thought that I sat down there with Ben and wrote, it wasn't quite how it worked. The other guys put in at least as much as I did, even the collaborators. So yeah, just go check it out. I don't think anyone's going to be disappointed. There's be a load of angles that you haven't thought about in there.
There certainly will. And you mentioned that kind of pivotal time in our evolution where for some reason we switched over from being hunter-gatherers to more agriculturalists. Can you, I know you go into this in the book, but can you speculate on why that was, why we made that switch?
It's difficult to tell, isn't it? I mean, I think there's a lot of theories. Was there some kind of an event that wiped out a lot of the megafauna? Did we really hunt them into extinction? I wouldn't have thought so. Some sort of climate sort of difference that happens naturally, nothing to do with what Greta tells us is causing it. And I don't know because I wasn't there. I mean, I go down really weird rabbit holes, but I'm not even sure about our history and timeline. I mean, for that book, we had to basically go with what we're taught, that there's sort of 10,000 years ago we started agriculture. Well, different in different parts of the world, but did that really happen? I don't know. Have we been around for 2.5 million years? I don't know. Were we created? Did we evolve from apes? Were we seeded here by the Anunnaki? I don't know. But all I do know is that we're designed to eat meat. That's what we thrive on. And everyone's pushing the opposite. And that is an explanation, the book really, of how this has come about and how long it's been going on for. I don't know what happened back then. By the standard sort of history that we're taught at school and how long we've been around, I don't know. What do you reckon? Do you think we hunted them out? Do you think there was some natural disaster? The ice ages hit? Who knows? I don't know.
All of those. I've heard even down to the level of like we wanted something fermentable to make alcohol or something. So you're right. It's really hard to speculate on what it was. You did mention something that I understood to be true as well, is that this was happening in different parts in the globe, maybe with different plants, but almost the same kind of time, which would suggest maybe the climate was warming up a little bit and we decided to do that. I think a lot of people would be stunned when they learn the things that you just said about, the things that we gave up and traded and things we created, like owning land, creating civilizations. We need governments, we need slaves, we need warriors, like all of a sudden, hunter-gatherers that didn't have a need for any of that stuff, currency, wars, you name it, like all of that came about because we started to create a commodity that had a worth, where before we could just take whatever we needed. And yeah, I mean, Dr. Mickey Bendor is probably right. We probably did overhunt all these big animals and needed to eat smaller and smaller animals. So it's tough to speculate on. You're right. You weren't there for the process. I wasn't there for the for the creation of all of this. So I'm not really sure. But here we are today, and your book goes through all of these different times that were really important in history, the Industrial Revolution and how we started to produce more food than we could consume, and the subsidies of corn and all of this stuff. But we get to today, and we do see this really interesting message of people of prominence, let's say like Bill Gates or something, that all of a sudden owns tons of land and is now promoting plant-based diets as the way to save the planet and save ourselves, health-wise. And you look at the dude, and I don't want to judge him, but he doesn't look particularly healthy to me. How is this story playing out today? Why do we keep hearing the same nonsense that meat is bad, fat is bad, that we're going to create lab grown meat and plant-based meat? Like, who continues to drive this nonsense, even as, like you said earlier, like the plant-based message is going down the tank? People are looking up carnivore on Google more than they are vegan now. Like, how is this message continue to seemingly be like doubled down on all the time by these people?
I think there's two answers to that. I think one is money, because there's so much profit in that processed food that is largely based on plants. The profits are far greater. And I've got to say the other one is, I think it's depopulation. I think that, I don't know why they're exactly doing it. There's so many explanations for, maybe they're doing it for our own good. There's going to be some solar flare that's going to wipe everything out. There's only a certain amount of people who can fit underground. I mean, there's sort of what seems like wacky explanations like that, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, if they can get, 3/4 of the planet wearing a muzzle in the supermarket, we'd never have believed that 5 years ago, right? So who knows what's going on? I mean, my missus sent me this thing today, and it's Bill Gates, and he's talking about how trees are bad, and we got to get rid of them all and cut them down and bury them, and because it's just unfathomable how mad this is. It was a little clip, and it's Alex Jones, from InfoWars, going on about it and going, God, how it's just you get speechless sometimes with the ridiculous crap that this guy comes out with. I mean, people are following this. This is somebody who said before they rebranded the flu. They said, somebody who actually stood up and said, with a good vaccination program, we can bring the world's population down by a significant amount, whatever it was. And this is the person they're trusting. And it was a great meme, and I'll see if I can remember it. But there's the dude from Parks and Recreation or whatever, and he's a little meme with him talking to Bill Gates, and he's going, I think you misunderstand me. No, he said, Bill Gates going, yeah, you said you're just not following the science. He said, no, I don't follow a friend of Jeffrey Epstein who is not a scientist, because this is it. They're pretending that this is the science and whatever. And that's become the new religion. I mean, we go into that in the book, how much religion has perverted all of this, go through all the Seventh-day Adventist story, and Ellen G. White and Harvey Kellogg and his anti-masturbation cornflakes and whatever. And, all of this crap of how religion has also done it. But they're doing this again because science has become the new religion, and it isn't science. So what's going on? Why is it going on? I honestly think that it's huge profits plus a desire to make people sick and controllable, like there always has been. There's loads of levels of people in that industry who are totally unaware of it. They're just, what people call useful idiots. But the people up the top, they know exactly what's going on. I mean, I don't know whether Bill Gates does, but I'm not even sure he's even up the top of it. Because, I mean, the people who actually print the money are the problems, right? Anything that's centralized, anything that they're trying to do with the WHO now, and sort of centralize healthcare and centralize anything and globalize it, and that's always the problem. Humans don't work like that. They've got to be in small communities, and that's how our brains work. And that we go into a lot in the book as well, the sort of whole tribe mentality of how humans are not designed to be run by, some psychopath in an ivory tower. So, whatever they're bringing in, this sort of global agenda. I heard a lovely explanation of it the other day that, if there's some global problem and some global solution, and they're censoring the people who are speaking out against it, then it's crap. You don't need to look any further. You don't need to look at studies. You don't need to look at anything like that. If it's got those three hallmarks, it's bullshit, and it's coming from the top. Now, Bill Gates, who knows? I mean, he, as you say, he doesn't look very good. He's got, what we call dadderies, the sort of man boobs. And he's not looking healthy whatsoever. So he obviously does eat some of the stuff that he preaches about. But then again, he's probably just addicted like everybody else. But Anthony grew up in the same town as him, didn't he? Anthony Chaffee. And he was telling me that he he used to see him in the local steakhouse a lot. And so, you know, this guy's trying to ban meat, and yet he's going down to the local steakhouse. And so he's obviously eating that stuff. He's eating the good stuff. What's he doing with all that land? I don't know. Is he going to have a load of cattle on it so he can feed the elites because they know what to eat? You look at the menus at sort of Davos or whatever, and it's all game and meat and whatever, and they're trying to push the plant-based thing. So it's just, it's unfathomable to me how people can't see what's going on and just go totally against it. We've got to go support those local farmers. We've got to buy from them because they're trying to shut them down. They're faking pandemics in animals as well as in people. Sorry if anybody's not down with that, but they are, you know, they are. And this is what's been going on the past few years with humans. And well, for a long time, actually. But let's not get into the whole Fauci thing and the AIDS thing. But are these people up the top? I don't think they're up the top. I don't think Gates and Fauci are. I think there's people behind that who are out in the shadows. You know, the problem we have is probably the central banks. That the problem is the people who actually print the money. You know, because Gates is still making money from doing things, right? He's not actually printing it. And so there's probably people controlling him. Whatever Gates is worth is probably nothing to these people behind the scenes that we don't even hear about. And then to go further, who knows who's behind them? Because sometimes you think, is it actually possible for humans to treat other humans like that? It's unfathomable to me. So, you know, they've got to convince other people below them to do it because they've got to fool them into thinking it's for the greater good. They're always, if you hear for the greater good, then that's a problem as well. You know that there's some psychopath behind that. So who's up the top? Is there some kind of alien? Do these reptilians exist? Are there mantid creatures under the Antarctic, you know, that have been running this thing? And why do the elites all keep going off to the Antarctic? Are they meeting with this mantid creature? I don't know. This might sound mad, but nowadays with such weird things happening, I'm open to anything. Just anything for me is I don't know. You know, I don't know the shape of the earth anymore. You know, I'm not an out and out flat earther. I'm not, you know, because I don't know. Because there's so many weird things that point towards other things. Is it a dimensional thing? You know, how far does Antarctica go? Does it go all the way around the outside, or is it really a blob, you know, on the bottom of the earth? And what is the bottom of the earth? Is it really spinning around? You know, I mean, it's got me to question so many things. And I had Chris Matthew on my podcast from Forbidden Knowledge News the other week. And we were chatting about this. It's just, you know, I love his episodes because they're just, he gets some proper wackos and some real geniuses, but you don't know which is which anymore because you just listen to them for entertainment. And just, you know, the problem is that all of this business about sort of flat earth, terrain versus germ theory, you know, virus theory, does it exist? Do viruses actually exist, or are they exosomes? All of this stuff is probably thrown out there to just create division, because people are now starting to argue. See, I play with the Daz Band, which is Darren Nesbitt, who runs the Light paper in England, which is a sort of truth paper, and fantastic work he's done with that. We were introduced because I'd been one of the authors on the Red Pill Revolution, and at a party, and he started singing this "We Are the 99%." You know, you can shove the New World Order up your ass, you can shove the poison vaccines up your ass, all of that. He started singing that. I said, "Did you write this? Because it's all around the world." He said, "Oh yeah, I did." I said, "Oh, let's get band together. Let's have some fun." And you know, we've been playing these freedom festivals and these gigs with sort of awake venues that don't throw you out for not having a muzzle on and whatever. And it's been great fun. It's been brilliant, very encouraging. But now it's sort of calmed down into the eye of the storm, and they're no longer sort of really having a go at all the truthers and anti-vaxxers and granny killers and whatever like us. And now there's becoming sort of division among the truthers, if you like, as well. So, you know, I was speaking to, we did a gig recently where Gareth Icke, David Icke's son, was speaking. And we were chatting to him in the green room, and he was saying, well, you know, everybody's like at their throats now. Everybody's, oh, this person is controlled opposition, and that one's evil, and that one's a Satanist, and that's one. You know, he said they're always saying it about my dad. I mean, David Icke, the sort of attacks he's had over the past 30 odd years. or more that he's been doing this. Incredible. But, you know, these people, you know, it's like people now say, oh, you've said such and such, like you're doubting the shape of the earth, so I'm not going to take anything else you say seriously. It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, some of the most important things I've had in my life, the important bits of knowledge, have been from people or sort of areas of knowledge that I thought most of it was bullshit, and yet there's an absolute gem in there. And yet, so somebody believes the earth's flat, somebody else who doesn't, and then there's like division. I don't care what shape the earth is. I don't care whether it's the virus theory or you know, germ theory or terrain. It's both. The thing is, the answer to all of these things is the same. And this is what we're saying in the book. You know, just be good to your neighbors, chill out, don't do anything that harms anyone, and mind your own business. Whatever anyone's doing and it's not doing any harm, just back off from it, get that tribal local mentality, buy your food locally, support the local farmers. Does it really matter if we're on a spinning globe or some flat plane with a firmament over the top with all the stars painted on it? It doesn't matter. And you know, people who believe one thing or the other shouldn't be arguing about it. You know, you just imagine the sort of hunter-gatherer mentality. They're in this environment. They believe what they believe. Most of them worship the sun, right? They didn't have some funny god that they imagined. That kind of came in later. But maybe they did if they saw through those realms, if they were taking a lot of hallucinogenics. And, you know, Chris Matthew and I got into that as well, because what is that? Is that just opening up your brain to what's actually there in slightly different dimensions? Or is it hallucinations that don't exist? Well, I would say the elites want to shut that sort of thing down. So it's probably pretty damn good, right? You know, they don't make a drug legal if it actually opens your mind. They like the ones that shut your brain and get you watching Netflix all day, right? So you know, what are we seeing with all of this division? That's the problem. That's the pandemic. It's a pandemic of division. We're all just people. We believe different things, and that's why it's so much fun to sit down with somebody with completely different views and chill out. You see, I have no problem with somebody going vegan. I worry about them because it's not really food. They're taking in a load of toxins, they're on a fast, and their brain's going to go nuts. And eventually they're going to be sending me death threats on my YouTube channel, which they do, you know?
So true.
So, you know, and then they come out of that when they get their brain, you know, properly nourished with some decent saturated fat and cholesterol and whatever. But all this division, and they know, they push the plant-based diets. So even a B vitamin deficiency makes people aggressive. They found that there was something, did some study or something in a prison, didn't they, where they upped the vitamin B, you know, the B complex that they were taking, or changed the diet or something, I can't remember. But they got the B levels up, and these people were not violent anymore. They weren't aggressive, they weren't confrontational. It totally changed their characters. So they're pushing this on us at one level for money. At the level above, is it for depopulation or just division? They know that people are going to get upset. I mean, you just got to look at it on Facebook or something where you see a conversation between a carnivore and a vegan. It's the same every time. We know what's coming. I mean, I've been veggie and vegan for that long, so I know exactly what they're going to say. And it comes, yep, here we go. Oh, yes, it's that and that and that. You know where they're going to go. But then you can see how far they've been into veganism, how quickly they end up in caps locks, screaming with, you know, as you mentioned, I'm a grammar Nazi, and no vegan seems to have decent grammar. They can't spell or punctuate. They got, I'm sorry to the really nice vegans out there, because there's loads of them, and I'm taking a piss now as a generalization when people have gone far into it and become militant. There's a lot of very sweet vegans who sit at home minding their own business and don't attack anybody. But it does make people very emotional, very aggressive past that emotional stage. And you know, when you see people come off this kind of thing and stop shouting at people and swearing at them and hoping they'll die and all of that sort of thing, who dare to eat an animal, when they come off that, because most of we carnivores have experimented with loads of different diets, right? We didn't just wake up one morning and go, right, I'm going to eat steak all day. They're often the most knowledgeable people, the carnivores, because they've been through every other diet and come to this one, the most dangerous one, in desperation. And so we've studied all the other ones. and and you see the vegans getting really angry and upset when they come out of it, when some health thing fails that makes them sit up and take notice, like it did with me. Then the emotions seem to balance up as well, and they become really chilled. Now, and I noticed I've got a carnivore Facebook group called 100% Carnivore and Beyond. And I noticed during that whole COVID time that people were not arguing. Very rarely were they arguing about it. On all the other groups and people's personal pages was, oh, you swallowed all the narrative, you're an idiot, you're taking the jabs, or it was, you're a granny killer because you're not wearing your muzzle. It was one or the other. And I didn't see much of that on the carnivore page. Either people seemed to be okay with it and they'd seen through it, or they were pretty chilled out and they didn't bother to mention it. And that seems to come when your brain is properly fueled. So what do the elites want? Do they really want a whole global population who can see right through them, who would just laugh at them and refuse right now and say, we are not complying now. We're not paying any taxes anymore. We're not going to pay any of your shit. We're not going to fund you anymore. And so the whole thing's going to collapse and it's going to come down. We don't believe your vegan shit. We've seen through it. Instead of most people will be going, oh, I'm eating all this awful food, including the odd steak, which is the naughtiest thing I eat. Now I'd better go plant-based. Oh, I'm so confused. All this information. And then they don't know. And the elites love that confusion. Let's stop calling them the elites. They're the predator class, right? They're psychopaths and they're the predator class. So they want that kind of confusion. They want that going on. And they don't want a load of completely stable people who are just going to go, listen, guys, just fuck off. We've had enough of you. Right? They don't want that anymore. That's their nightmare because they won't be able to control us. And that's really the gist of the book, of how we go through exactly how that's happened and waking people up to it so they don't have any doubts anymore. And they will go down to their local farm and they'll buy a load of good meat and they'll go home and eat it. And they'll never have any guilt about it anymore. And all these idiots like Esselstyn and Michael Greger and all these lunatics, they will not be buying their books anymore and getting confused. And that'll be it. And it'll be over, hopefully, because this war on meat is getting very worrying,
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Michael Greger, and his latest book that he wrote last year is called How Not to Age. So finally, there's at least a little bit of honesty when you see him and you see how old he is. He's in his 50s. He's not aging well. Let's just say that. You look amazing in your 60s, and he just barely turned 50 and doesn't look great. How Not to Age is an appropriate title of that book.
Yeah, well, it should be, how not to. His other one was How Not to Die, wasn't it? How Not to Die of Natural Causes. It should have been called.
Exactly.
I'm 10 years older than him, and I mean he is getting a little bit. Something's going wrong now. He's really babbling, he's slurring his words. He's on this treadmill all the time or something. I mean, Sean Baker's funny. He's always having a go at him. Yes. He does it so beautifully. Have you noticed another thing that seems to go with a plant-based diet is sense of humor? You get these hilarious memes from the carnivores about the vegan doctors and whatever. And people always say I'm vegan bashing. I'm not vegan bashing. I have great sympathy. I was one, and a lot of my very sickest clients are vegans who are coming out of it. I don't vegan bash. I bash the people who push the veganism. I want to bash the people up the top. I have no problem with that. They're fair game. I mean, look what Michael Greger looks like. It was just funny. I mean, Sean put something up. What do you want to take? A, B, C, or D? I forget exactly what it was, but who you want to take advice from? A, which was Michael Greger there. That picture of him where he's got his shirt buttons popping open. And it was this wacko vegan doc or Flipper or Mr. Potato Head or something like that. I can't remember what it was, but there was all these choices and nobody chose Greger, of course, oh yeah, Lucky 8 Ball or something like that. What are you going to choose for your dietary advice? And I love it. There's so much humor in this. And I think that is huge as well in bringing down these elites. Because, I mean, take a bully on a playground. There's not much point attacking him, and you can't sort of cry and whinge and whatever. What basically the best thing to do is to get everybody just laughing at him. They have no response to that. And if everybody was just completely taking a piss out of it, I mean, look at the stuff Bill Gates says. How can anybody take him seriously? The man's barking mad. Instead of getting angry with him, he should be somebody which is everybody's totally ignoring. Oh, Bill Gates is saying that. Oh, now he's genetically engineered these mosquitoes, to fly around and inject stuff with us into us automatic. I mean, the man's mad. He's a Bond villain, isn't he? He should be that sort of stroking a cat in an underground bunker. Honestly, he's how anyone takes him seriously. Don't bother getting angry with them. Just ignore these people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You mentioned the confusion earlier, and I was just listening to Callie Means, who's kind of a whistleblower, former lobbyist in the food industry, and he was talking about the number of studies that come out every single year, funded by the nutrition, the food companies and pharma. And there's I can't remember what the number was, but there's so many studies. And his point was that was the point, to have tons of different studies coming out so that you would be confused whether they were right or wrong. It wasn't really a concern of theirs at all. It was just to put so many of them out so that people would be very confused about this. And there would be a time a few years ago where I would have listened to all of that and said, okay, Phil, let me put on my tinfoil hat and whatever you think is fine. But we've seen a lot of weird stuff in the last few years. And so I think the way you wrote your book, the style you wrote your book, is very informative and will help people make their own decisions, whatever those are. And so I absolutely love your message, that the main point, what we should all be doing is to be kind, to listen to one another, to not try to control people, and to try to discover the truth for our own lives and just be happy. And I'm glad that for you and for that's been a carnivore diet, and it's helped a lot of people out there. And so again, I love the content of your book. I love that you took the time to be on our show today. Where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work, and also to sign up for your challenge, which should be coming up in January, I believe?
Yeah, we'll probably run it again then. But it's there all the time as pre-recorded content, and there's a Q&A every week, so people can ask stuff. Huge amount of content in there on the members area. So much. God, we have seriously over-delivered on that, honestly, I have to say. There's hundreds of hours of stuff on there. But there's the Red Pill Food Revolution book at which you can find on the bigfatchallenge.com website again. But I'll tell you what I do. If I just send you my link tree, right, and people can go in there, and then it will be updated. There'll be everything in there. My consults, the Red Pill Revolution books, joining the Big Fat Challenge, the all the other stuff that we do. It'll all be under there. You can find the Facebook groups and follow us around, come say hello. And we're very accessible. We don't ignore messages and stuff. I spend way too much time probably answering people. I love answering people. I love it when people send messages, and to get the healing stories that we get. And it's lovely to get to know these people. The people who have been on the challenge have become great friends, and a lot of them are now on the Big Fat Tribe, where we have like 4 calls a week. And this, as we said earlier, it's really good for support. But not only that, but in diet and health, but just in, a lot of people are very isolated at this time. And a lot of people haven't woken up to stuff like this that we've been talking about. And to be able to have a tribe, again, unfortunately, we're doing it over Zoom, but it's still a tribe. Much nicer if we could get it around a campfire. And we are going to start to do stuff like that in the new year. We've already had some at Ben's, and we've got another one of our. This is the first time I mentioned this, actually. I haven't even publicized it yet, but we've got one of our carnivore conferences coming up in Spain at this beautiful redesigned monastery. We had it in 2019, then we had to cancel it the year later when Sean was going to come. We had Sophia Clements in 2019. That's how I got to know her, and as one of the speakers. And this time we've got a lot of surprises lined up, but it's a beautiful, beautiful venue. And so we're going to do that. The first time I've mentioned that publicly, I only just signed a contract the other day. And we're going to be starting to do a sort of carnivore roadshow around the UK as well, so people can meet up. But to get on the Big Fat Tribe as well, to get on Zoom, we got people from all over the world, different time zones. So we do different calls at different times, and you can come on and chat about anything. I mean, if somebody comes on, they need support, it's great. Everybody goes on and they get the focus of a whole call with loads of people, with all their ideas and support. But if not, just people just chat about all this kind of tinfoil hattery and whatever it is, you know, so it can be a real good hub for people who've woken up about all the other stuff as well. But yeah, just the easiest thing is to just put it in one Linktree link. It'll be down there, and people can go check that out and find that. As things shift about, then it'll be a sort of evergreen link. Otherwise, because we keep changing things. Ben is also amazingly good with tech and putting up landing pages and things like that. And it changes all the time. You know, he has about 300 ideas a day, and I find it difficult to keep up. He's incredibly, and he mentioned the other day that he's got an IQ of over 160, and I thought, yeah, this is why I can't keep up with you. I thought I was kind of bright being in the 130s, but no, Ben is really bright.
Wow.
But yeah, so, you know, leave it at that sort of central thing. But the bigfatchallenge.com is where to sign up. And yeah, and my YouTube channel, just under Phil Escott. We've got a lot of presentations on there that are free, like the food conspiracy and, you know, support for people leaving veganism. Ben does these lovely sort of slide presentations and we go through them. We've even got one of, you know, that vegan meme that they keep sending out where it's got different teeth at the top. And this is why we're frugivores and not carnivores. So we go through all of that. Sort of like once in every 3 times, at least, that you argue with a vegan on Facebook, which I really shouldn't do. I must give it up. It's my guilty pleasure. But they'll put that meme in at some point. So we thought we'd do a whole video on debunking that meme about teeth and digestive system, which they fall back on. Oh, you got no claws, you got no, you know, and on it goes, this ridiculous thing. But anyway, yeah, ton of stuff out there. It'll all be in the Linktree. And, you know, thank you, Casey, for having me on. You wound me up to talk about some good, passionate stuff there. Thank you.
Good. My favorite part, getting people wound up. You're so passionate about it. I absolutely love this conversation. This has been great. I think people really appreciate that they can find all of your immense amount of content in one simple link. So we'll be sure to link that up. And Phil Escott, thank you so very much for everything you've learned and being able to share all of that learning and all of your experience in your books and writing and all your content. And thank you very much for taking time out of your day today to be on our show. We really appreciate you.
It was a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, Casey.
It was an honor to host you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.